just past the first 15 minutes of the Electronic Arts Conference at E3 2015, Unravel was first introduced by former EA Studios Executive Vice President Patrick Sutherland. He talked about, well, he's like he's a man, like a good shape. Well, I'm not going to say anything else, but he looks like good man.
He's a good boy.
Yeah, he's a good boy. So it's like when you hear him, he talked about the importance of gameplay, because he makes this introduction to the game, right? So he talked about the importance of gameplay, the bond between creators and players, and finally the games he was going to reveal next with his voice. I'm sure that he must he must have like this kind of voice, the first one is unlike anything else you'll see today. Okay, says Sutherland. Okay, a year ago, I went to see this group called Coldwood in northern Sweden. The moment I saw the game they're making, I knew we had to bring it to all of you. It's an experience that is emotional and deeply creative, centered on a tiny character with a huge heart. And, well, please, Patrick, if you are listening to me, I'm not trying to make a joke of you. It's like...
We're trying to emulate your voice.
Exactly, but
it might have gone wrong, but
but it comes out of
we're
the
not professional
admiration.
actors, things happen,
Please, it comes from the admiration that I have of you. Okay.
Obviously.
So then, yes, he says emotional and deeply creative experience center on a tiny character with a huge heart, and then he says this is Unravel. And then the lights go out, and on the screen appears from the right a small red figure of wool running towards the center. There's a huge tree on the left, of which we can see only the lower part of the trunk, and this little wooden figure, whom we'll call Yarny, throws his own thread up the tree, and after a few tugs, he pulls down the game's title, Unravel. As the title sways from side to side, Yarny looks at the camera and waves at us. The lights come back on, and Martin Sallen, creative director of Coldwood, walks out on a stage. So now, it is now when the creative director, terrifyingly happy, shaking his hands, shares with us the three fundamental pillars of the game. But since I must say he does a pretty well presentation here, because he talks about everything that is important everything that I believe is important in the game, but I would like to explain it myself. So first of all, let's start with Martin Sallen. Okay, he is the creative director of the Swedish company Coldwood Interactive, located in northern Sweden, in Umeå. I believe it's called like that. Umeå. The company became known thanks to the wonderful world of Unravel, but they are by no means amateurs in the industry, nor is this their first game. Coldwood was founded in 2003 by 6 colleagues after the video game company they worked for closed down. They received their first publishing deal thanks to a demo. It was called Sky Racing 2005, and it consisted of a sky simulator for consoles and PC. Back then, they didn't care what kind of game they were making, as long as they could work together developing video games. For them, it was the best job in the world, and they had a friendly working environment. So they put out a bunch of little games, most of them snow sports games. What do you think, Azares? I mean, I would love also to be in this kind of environment. I mean, working with friends, developing video games, I find it cool, to be honest.
Yeah, like that first moment when you are able to work in what you like. It's like, no, I don't have to be working at a bank, and you're like, oh, I'm actually creating video games. This is so cool. And you have a small team of people you like and you are kind of friends with, or even friends with. You go out for a beer and then you discuss a bit of the mechanics of the game. I think that's, I'm not going to say like the dream, but it's almost the dream.
Yeah, it's like a really wonderful environment, and it's kind of difficult to say that it's not. And also for creative people, I understand that gaming development, I mean, must be really hard, but also really satisfying at the end, right?
Yeah.
So over time, a feeling of wanting to do something of their own, like something more personal. So the first attempt came from The Fight, Lights Out, an exclusive PlayStation 3 fighting game that used the PlayStation Move controller, which I believe is Sony's alternative to
Yeah,
the Wii
yeah, it was.
controllers. Well, yes, like any first project, they were not satisfied, also similar like Tegland, but it helped them learn a lot from the experience. In my case, I wouldn't say I wouldn't be interested in this game. What do you think?
Not at all.
Not
Not at
really.
all.
But well, for them, for Martin, the experience of this game was an eye opener. He saw potential, possibilities, but here this is the more important. Maybe this is the origins of Unravel. He also saw a lack of meaning, of depth. Despite all the technical problems that the fighting game reached, despite all the technical problems that the fighting game had, it reached an audience of almost 600,000 people. Which I don't know why, but Martin says that for him, he says it's not like the game standards. I think 600,000 is. I would love to have that kind of attention.
Well, I guess that he was kind of comparing it to the big ones in the
Yes.
industry, right? If you're like, yeah, like Metal Gear or GTA, well, yeah, 600,000 is not too much, but it's true that for a small studio, it's definitely a
Yeah, it's
very good amount.
yes. And also, if you compress it with other types of art, definitely it's a really good number.
Oh, yeah.
What would you do? What would you like to tell with an audience of that size, Casares? What would you? I mean, would you feel intimidated by it, or would you really feel more creative? A difficult question, right?
Like okay, so it depends. If the audience comes, like, if I know that I'm going to have an audience of those many people, it might be kind of a challenge, an extra challenge for me. So I don't want to leave 600,000 people down. I want to let them down. But if they just come, I like to rise to the challenge and say, okay, I want to do a great game and a cool story and see what happens. It's like with this, right? If in the first program we have 600,000 people watching, we are like, yeah, maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Let's see in a couple of years. But
Yes.
if we just get them over time, it's great.
Yeah. Well, for Martin, he says they were holding the attention of players for hours, and that is something that every gaming developer wants. But they were telling nothing. The game had nothing profound or memorable to say in the game. Only a pointless distraction that would keep them busy for a couple of hours. That is a good point. I mean, that's good. Distractions are good. But for Martin, he realized that it's not, for him at least, not enough to go to work and have fun. He wanted to create something that had meaning. And it is in this context that Unravel was born. Also, it is important to mention that in that moment, in 2005, large companies like Ubisoft or Electronic Arts supported or decided to support financially small developers to launch creative and original games. Thanks to the relation that Coldwood and Electronic Arts had before, because they were together in other projects, I guess, I understand. They had a meeting with EA. They had a meeting when a demo of the Red Doll came along. EA loved it. The story, the setting, the character. EA loved everything. They got in love. And it was a project they wanted to get behind. For Coldwood, it wasn't, as I said before, it wasn't just about the money. Rather, it was more about the infrastructure. Coldwood could focus on the artistic and technical side of the game, while EA made the rest. And for them, it's good. Yes.
Could I? Yeah, sorry. Can I interrupt you for a second?
No. Tell me. I was going to ask you. Do you agree with this?
Is no. I was kind of going to ask you, like, for for a long time, Electronic Arts, well, the big ones, right? Electronic Arts and Ubisoft. Ubisoft started being little, but then it grew up to be a big one. Blizzard, whatever. They kind of, especially Electronic Arts, like after the PS2 era, like when they got into PS3 and all that, I feel like they we're there for the money. And when we think about Electronic Arts nowadays, we are generally not inclined to the idea of indie games. We're thinking about the big ones, right? And so for me, it's curious that they decided to go this path. This we're going to finance some indie games, which probably are not going to make as much money as the big ones. And my question here, like your opinion, because probably you don't know, because you probably will have to be inside these companies to know. Like, what led to this change of heart? Like, what made them say, okay, let's try and find some indie games that really go in a different direction?
Well, I must. Well, in this aspect, it is interesting because this game. I don't remember if it was released in 2016 or 2015. In 2016, it was released in 2016, and in 2016 it was the year where Electronic Arts created like a program inside Electronic Arts to support indie developers. And it was something that even Ubisoft started before. I believe it's a game, I don't remember the name. I think it was like Valkyria War. I mean, I remember that it's like a war and it's an indie game. And I believe it is because they realized that indie games are also a good way. First, you don't really know how much money you can get from an indie game. I mean, I don't know that you said that, but I know that you haven't said that. But what I mean is that considering that maybe, and obviously, uh, Star Wars is going to get more money than Unravel, but Unravel is also going to get a really good amount of it. And also because I understand that what they want also is to reach the maximum audience as possible, and Unravel is a way to have to, as you said, why maybe is the main purpose of why they chose this path. I believe it was due to reputation, because Unravel gives a good reputation for Electronic Arts. A good, it's honestly, what company wouldn't want to have Unravel as part of their portfolio? I mean, I think it's not perfect. It's not original one, but it's definitely a game that you would want to have in your I don't know, like your catalog or portfolio. I don't know how to call it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I kind of understand. But at the same time, imagine that it went horribly wrong. Would they have stopped trying to get into the indie market, or do you think that it was their idea, even if it didn't work at the first time?
I think that once you are, I mean, right now I think that the one that doesn't, isn't on this path is stupid. I mean, I think that uh, in this industry, not every, I mean, mm, I mean, the reputation is everything. Is really important. So yeah, I couldn't add more to it. I mean, I
Okay.
think I mean, even if it got not as planned as they expected, maybe they wouldn't launch the second one, but definitely they are going to support indie developers in the future, because they don't really know which, for example, Undertale. I mean, I'm sure that the budget wasn't as high, it wasn't high at all. I mean, in comparison to other even indie games, but it can have a repercussion. It can have this spotlight that I know that this kind of companies want. And above all, Electronic Arts, because Electronic Arts in the past they had um, some problems with the way they were doing things. I'm
Okay.
thinking about maybe
So.
Star Wars Battlefront 2, perhaps,
Uh-huh.
but I think this is a way for them to push up that
So
image.
yeah. So maybe it was a way for them to kind of clean their name a bit.
I wouldn't say clean, because in order to get, because I
Yeah.
think that Unravel got, I don't know, I think the problem that they had was after Unravel, I believe, I think.
No,
Um,
but they've had problems
Even
like,
before.
yeah.
Yeah, I believe that maybe Electronic Arts is it's also because Electronic Arts has been in the industry long time, really
Yeah, it's
long
been.
time. It's been,
Yeah.
I believe, one of the first companies that were making sports game in the PC. So yeah,
Mm.
I would say it would be that way. No, I wouldn't say clean because clean would say that is dirty, but yeah, in order to like, yeah, to
It's
recalculate,
around there. It's
yes,
around
to
there. I mean,
recalculate the path.
if you're making a football game every year saying, "Oh, it's very new and it's very cool and it's great," uh, your image is not great. I mean,
Yes,
maybe people that like football is like, "Oh, great, a new game," but it felt like, all these products that they had. It felt, and it still feels sometimes today,
like a
that
lack
is
of
kind of
imagination.
a lack of imagination, more of a, it feels more like a patch instead of a new game.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I get it too.
Mm. Okay, continue, please.
S- So yeah, as sorry, my in sorry, man. Well, yes. So the thing is that in Martin Salis' mind, remember Martin Salis is the creative director. I think is the one that came up with the idea of Unravel. In Salis' mind, he knew what he wanted to create. For him, the games are really powerful. They reach games reach many people and have the ability to truly captivate the audience in a way that few other art forms can. As a game maker, he wants to make. He feels like a certain responsibility. He doesn't want to make games that are distractions. For him, time is worth more than that, and he wants to give players more meaningful experiences instead. And Ravel was created in that spirit. He wanted to make something more personal, something with more impact. The game didn't have to change the world, or even try, but it had to be genuine. It had to have a deeper meaning. It had to have heart in the end. So the story of Unravel is the adventure of Journey, a tiny red character made of a single thread of wool that unravels as the story unfolds. Yarn means a lot. The yarn means a lot of things. It represents the bonds between people, the red thread that ties everyone and everything together, memories, feelings. It stands for love, and Yarny is the manifestation of all of those things. Tethered to something important at the start of the game, and trying to make it to the end without unraveling, Yarny was not meant to be a superhero, but a helper, a positive force. The story of its creation is also unique. I don't know if you know it, Casares, how it
Me,
was.
myself, and I, yes. I mean, what, like the story of how it was created. Well, I mean, if we don't want to lie about it, then a bit, yes, because of the podcast last time that we did some days ago in Spanish. But I still feel like it's it's very intimate story
Yes,
of how it was created.
and
Yeah.
also it portrays the spontaneity that was part of it, because the story of its creation, it's interesting. Its creator, Martin Salin, made the doll manually while on a camping trip with his family in the countryside in northern Sweden. He had this idea that the thread represents the link between people, their memories, feelings. While he was there, he was, I understand, by his company, by Coldwood, by his colleagues, I mean, he was asked to explain a little bit more about this concept that he had about the thread and the love and everything. And since he was in the countryside, obviously he had nothing to work with, so he created a little posable yarny doll from some old metal wire that he found and some yarn that he borrowed. Then he started wandering around the woods, taking pictures of Yarny in different situations, figuring out how the gameplay would be like. He discovered with his children, with his kids, that there are a lot of fun things that he could do with his newly created doll. On the other hand, the local nature was a huge inspiration, which is why it plays an important role in the game. All the levels in Unravel are based on environments of northern Sweden, places with their own little stories and special locations. And what could Yarny do if he was alone in the woods? Well, he could build bridges, swing from a lasso, or use its yarn to pull objects around. The game design happened organically as he played with the doll. And it's interesting, Casares, because I imagine, I mean, now that I have the game in mind. I mean, you can watch it on the screen. If you have, if you don't know how Unravel is, please go to YouTube and watch it, because it's. I agree with Martin Salin that the environments are pretty cool and pretty beautiful. I mean, because this game, I mean, it's really difficult to talk about this game without using words like love, beautiful, precious. I mean, these are words that have to be there. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, and you could add a long list of adjectives to it. Yeah, cute, especially cute, right? This is the
Yes,
first thing
cuteness.
that came to mind. It was like, oh, this is a cute little toy that goes around and does stuff. Now, I was going to ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to drag for a long time. Um, Now that you have played the first game and the second game, um, do you think that, I mean, obviously the mechanics of the game are cool and all, but do you think maybe there was some missing things that they could have done with these mechanics?
Well,
During the
that's
gameplay,
well.
you thought like, oh, maybe there's something else that we have done.
I think you can explain that better, but I agree with you because we already discussed this. I agree with you that yeah, in Unravel 2 the physics feel kind of strange. I mean, for example, right now I'm going to explain a little bit about this because I have it prepared for you because I want you to participate in this concept because it is kind of difficult to explain this if you don't know what physics mean in a video game. But first of all, let's sorry. First of all, let's say that sorry. Okay, let's say that Unravel, okay, is a side-scrolling platform game in which players interact with the environment, solving puzzles to continue with the adventure. Its gameplay is based on physics, and that's the point where I want you to answer to that question because I think that you explain it better. What would physics be in a video game?
Okay, so well, the laws of nature that you 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 feel intuitive. Well, I mean, you might not feel intuitive, but that's like bad physics. But when it's good physics, you feel it intuitively. Like you, for example, let's say you, I don't know, let's say you cut a tree. Okay, obviously it has nothing to do with this game, but let's say you cut a tree. When you are halfway through it, you expect it to move a little. When you go all the way through the trunk of the tree, you expect it to go down like this.
Yeah,
Boom.
to fall
If it
in a way.
doesn't do this kind of movement, if it goes like really fast, or if it goes very slow, you are like, What's going on? What's happening?" So that's what we mean with good physics, and
Yes.
that the physics of the game are very important because they feel real. Like if you well, maybe you're going to explain.
No. I mean, in order to add more info about what you're saying, but only to complete information, I would say that to give more examples. For example, I mean, Yarny is a tiny figure. So, for example, if he's going to attach his yarn. Its yarn to a chair, and the chair is bigger than him. It would be obvious in a real physics world that the chair is going to be difficult to move because it's bigger than him, it's bigger than Journey, and that it's going to be difficult for him to move it. So that it had to translate these characteristics of the objects, right? Or in a summarized way of saying it, the game simulates the same physical laws, gravity, mass, friction. I mean, how objects works in real life, um, on objects of the game as in real life, meaning what we have just explained, right? So, Yarny can push things, pull them, grab them, and they all behave in a realistic way. That is the important stuff. It must be felt realistic. And Yarny is made from a single strand of yarn, which is attached to something at the start of the game, and the further away from the yarn it gets, the more the yarn unravel. At certain points, and at certain points in the adventure, we will come across rolls of wool from which Yarny will recompose. So these are used in gameplay terms as checkpoints, we could say. The thread of yarn is Yarny's tool, meaning that you can throw the front end of the yarn like a grappling hook, attach it to objects to pull them, or swing on it. Rappel down, connect knots to build bridges, or use it as a slingshot to launch Yarny high into the air. The thread will help us cross obstacles, solve puzzles that come our way. Some challenges will be easy to tackle, either by connecting to a bridge or by tying a knot to a branch and climbing down from it. In other occasions, for example, it will be more difficult and we will have to stop for a moment to rethink the strategy and see how to continue. Because as there are some puzzles that you need to stop and really think about how you can continue. Or it may even happen that just when we were about to reach or it may even happen that just when we are about to reach the wool roll, remember the checkpoint, we cannot continue since there is no more yarn. So we'll have to come back to see where we left more wool than we should. So the goal is to get from start to finish, connecting the dots we find. As we progress through the adventure, going through obstacles and solving puzzles, we will discover a personal story. And that is the reason why we live this adventure with Journey. To connect the memories and events that happened to a family. Although actually the story is much more than the life of a family, it is a story that is told without words. Unravel looks for meaning in every challenge, in every level, in every setting. Since there is no dialogue, the settings, the environment, the details, the music, and the gameplay are used to tell a story. Or actually two stories, the past one and the present one. The past one is told through the details, memories, secrets, and subtleties of the environment, like pieces of a puzzle that you put together as you go forward. The present is Yarny's adventure, the moments, the images, the places, and the events that Yarny and us, the players, will discover during the trip. Moments like this shaped the level design so that each level could tell its own story. Am I right? Am I going right here? Would you add anything else to the underlying story? Because I didn't want to tell a lot about this story, but something must be said, right?
Okay, so I mean, it really depends on where you put the point of, okay, this is a spoiler or this is not. From my point of view, what I would say is not a spoiler, but I guess it depends on the host to decide if it's
You have total freedom. Say whatever you want.
Okay.
I trust on you.
Okay.
No, but seriously, say whatever you want.
But be careful. But seriously, be careful. No. So, without getting too much into it, Yarny is true that it's made of wool, but it's kind of part of a house. It's part of a family, right? We don't know who did it exactly, right? There could be different theories about it, or maybe it's not even needed a theory. Like, yeah, this guy did it. But in any case, what I see, what I would say differently from what you said is that, you can understand that the present is the journey of the journey itself, like when Yarny goes to these places and does all this stuff. And you said, what was the other one? Like the present and then
the past one. What happened before the events that are taking place in the present.
Okay, but like, yeah, I feel like, yeah, if you want to say like I wouldn't say like those are the. I think the game itself is stagnant in a time, right? It's like this moment in time, and then Yarny goes through the memories that led to that moment.
Yes.
And then at the end, you kind of see where it went to. Like, what's the point of the story, where it went to? So I wouldn't say it's like it's not like the events are happening while Journey is going through them. Those are just memories. He's just seeing them, like putting you as a viewer of the story of this family,
Hmm.
and then like the present, if you could say, is the house, is that what happens there, like the people in there, what happens to them or doesn't happen to them. um but I mean, you could also understand that the present itself is Journey going through those moments.
Yes.
What would you pick? Yeah.
And also, I think that you would agree with me about the environment, about the importance of the environment.
Ah,
Did you
super.
like the settings, the different settings that the game portrays?
Some of them are absolutely gorgeous. All of them, either through the visual effects or the music, um, they fit perfectly on what they're trying to tell you. Some of them you might not like them as such, like, oh my god, this is not beautiful, which will happen. I must tell you, but it puts you there for a reason, and you're going to see the reason while you play it. So I think from that point of view, it's absolutely great.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Um, the world of Unravel is inspired from Umeå, northern Sweden, the hometown of Coldwood. They wanted to share some of their natural places that they loved so much. And let's be honest, I think that you would agree with me. These are not the usual settings that we see in video games.
Mhm.
And I think that's an advantage to Unravel, that it offers something new in a way.
Mhm.
Martin began designing the levels in nature during his camping trip, and this inspiration was there to the end. Unravel shows the beauty in the ordinary, of the beautiful places that we could find in nature. The world of Unravel is full of beautiful things to explore, and it feels like a real, relatable place. Every environment had to feel different and something different to tell. And to make us feel, nothing better than the music, don't you think?
Yeah.
Music plays a fundamental role in giving that tone and atmosphere unique to each setting. As I said, the story of Unravel is told without words, so the music becomes the voice of the game, the channel through which portray emotions and feelings. As the story reflects big themes such as love, nostalgia, and the bonds between people, the music had to be able to break us inside and put us back together again. To do this, they decided to turn to composers from their area, Frida Johansson and Henrik Oya, for an important reason.
Como
They
es, Eric? Oh yeah.
Oya, it's like
Oh
oh
yeah.
oh yeah oh
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Eric.
oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Let's go.
By the way, spelled OJA. Oh yeah, and I understand that the J in Sweden is like an I. So
I don't know, but best compositor ever.
yes,
You can
absolutely. Both
continue.
of them, they play. This music is beautiful. Um, so they chose them. They chose these two composers for an important reason. They had to share the same culture as Coldwood, so they would better understand what Coldwood wanted to convey on every setting, since it's inspired on northern Sweden. They started, the composers, they started using traditional folk instruments as a starting point, and from there they built this beautiful soundtrack that feels unique in every way. The music changes dynamically to coincide with what is happening on the screen, creating an organic living atmosphere which goes along with Journey. Unravel shows natural surroundings accompanied by violins, acoustic guitars, and hand drums, and with an atmosphere created with strong reverberations. All of this portrays, this nature setting. But as the mood of the stage changes, the number of organic instruments is reduced, and other, more artificial and harsh sounds appear, as I said, depending on what's on the screen. There are situations in which the game where there are situations in the game where the tone becomes darker and the music naturally changes to reflect this. It is also noticeable that they give importance to sound design, since without those rich sound details that bring the game to life, it would be a very different experience. Okay, so Hakan Dalsfeld is the programmer and sound designer at Unravel, and he created a totally immersive experience with evocative sounds like the wind through the trees, the running of water, and the different animals that we meet. The audio team, I must say, has achieved a very good balance between the sound design within the soundtrack, as if both were worn. And I'm telling you, Casares, that the soundtrack, I've heard it many times already. I mean, I already heard it the first time I played the game because I already liked the soundtrack. And for me, I like these organic instruments. I like these. It's not classical music, but it's like traditional music, no, like folk music, and I love it. I must say, I love it.
I okay. So
I think I
I
remember
think
in the last podcast that we also talked about Unravel that it's not a soundtrack that you have put a lot for you while you are studying or working. I
mm,
did. I've done it because
oh, yeah,
yeah, it put me into that situation of being
chill,
relaxed. Yes, of chillness.
relax.
Yes.
Hmm. Um, for me, it's a soundtrack that during the while I play the game, it hit perfectly every spot of the game. I do remember a couple of them, especially the one with there's a chase. I'm not going to be more specific than that, but there's some kind of chase in the game, and it's very fun. I kind of remember the one. And well, in general,
Hmm.
it's good stuff. And if you wanted to use it while you are studying, I think it's a good soundtrack. But personally, it wasn't as appealing to me for me to look for it back again. I mean, obviously, if I had to make a video specifically about the soundtrack, probably I would listen to it again, and maybe I love it. I don't know, but the final feeling when I think about it is good soundtrack, not something like that you would go back to it and listen to it again time and time again. But I'm not sure. Maybe I just kind of forgot about it.
Okay, fair enough. Um, so now that we have established the context of how the game was created and how what the ideas were behind the creative process, let's come back to the presentation at the beginning with the E3 with Patrick Sutherland and Martin Salling shaking his hands, really nervous. But what he did really good in this presentation is that he showed honesty. He showed authenticity. I mean, he showed that he was deeply, deeply in love with his game, that he really trusted on its concept, and that he I mean, we can see that it wasn't inside of him. He had to like bring it to all of the people that were in the conference. And what did they receive? Well, after the presentation, the reception from the public was incredibly positive.
Incredible.
There, the people were they got in love so much with Yarny. I mean, video game articles claim that Unravel had won the love of the public, and Coldwood couldn't be happier with the support that they were receiving through social media. Unravel not only represented a breakthrough moment for Coldwood from a purely creative standpoint, but for the first time in the studio's history, the team enjoyed the spotlight. From the moment Cute Yarny was revealed during EA's E3 2015, handmade dolls, drawings, animations began to flourish in the social media. The studio even made a video on how to build your own Yarny. That's how they wanted to give it to the public. And what about the pressure? Well, this, of course, implies more pressure for the team, obviously, but also a huge boost. Unravel is by no means the perfect game. It isn't, but it certainly served its purpose. Today, the game has a score of 80 on Metacritic, although the reviews are polarized between those who were fascinated by Yarny's journey and those who criticized the monotony in the puzzles, and that sometimes the movement of the character is kind of floppy. But me, now I'm going to ask my partner, but I would say that I'm inclined to say that I'm the one. I'm into the group that were fascinated by Jarny's journey, by what how, what what this world could give us as players, and also what I believe is the most important part of Unravel. Man, I mean, it's like you feel so all the time with the game, and the music. It's like it goes. It you flow with the game. I mean, I believe that's why people maybe criticize those maybe those puzzles that were not very well explained, maybe, or because I think that this game gives gives players this flow that is really cool to go on. And what do you think? What do you think about the game?
Um, difficulty wise, I say that like I had to. So this is actually curious. There was one time when I kind of knew how to do a puzzle, but because of the way realistically that the physics work,
Hmm.
I had to kind of take away one of the yarn threads to put it somewhere else so that the actual physics would work. And when I fixed it, it's like they were on the right places, but they were not on the right order. And so the physics logically, if you put a knot on something and then on another something, and then you kind of create, for example, a ramp,
Hmm.
depending on how you do those knots and the order that you do them, the ramp is going to be floppy. It's not going to be able to hold any weight. But if you do it on the right way, it's going to. So
And
I
and
do
as an overall, what do you think about it? So as an overall, I
the
mean,
about the
the
game.
game experience, yes.
n- Uh, it's great for a first playthrough. Absolutely great. Really, really good for a first playthrough. For a second playthrough, it's okay. I mean, because you're not you already know what is going on. You already know the different places. You know kind of the feelings that it's going to make you feel. Some of them might still like, for example, the other day I started playing it again, and I didn't remember the part where I would put a knot on a comet. What's it called?
Yes, the comments, right?
It's a comet. Okay. I didn't even remember that part, so I was like, "Oh, we so much fun!" And then I got into a like I hit a tree and I was dead, and I was like, "Oh, you actually have to move this thing." Okay, never mind.
It happened the same
And
thing to me. The same thing.
yeah,
Yeah, the same thing.
yeah,
We
I'm
had boom.
flying, boom. Oh shit. Okay,
Sorry, it is called kite.
a
Comet
kite.
is like
Yeah,
the thing that the astral
yeah,
thing, and the
yeah,
kite.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, there's actually an expression for people who smoke very hardly, which is to be high as a kite. So
Oh, oh,
that's why I
I.
know the expression. In any case, why do I know that? Never mind. In any case, no, but the game itself, the first playthrough is very fun. The second playthrough is fun, but it's obviously not as unexpected. It's not such an unexpected journey, even though it's a very enjoyable one.